Hello. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Lynda Lamp, and I'm here to host a Q&A session with you about life. We've been reading my book, Walking Through Your Walls, Loving Yourself and Everyone Else. And I've got some questions that have been submitted from people that have been watching that. Welcome, Amber. Thank you for joining me today. I have some questions that have been submitted. So we'll start with those. And then after I get through all of those, if we have any more questions, we'll do that. If while I'm on here, you would like to submit a question, you can either do it through the console that you're at. You can also text me directly at 907-351-3003, and that'll come into this phone here. And you could even call that number if you wanted, and we could put you on speakerphone if you wanted to ask your question that way, so you don't have to type. And another hint, if you don't want to type, but you do want to submit a question, you can always use the dictation on your phone as well. So let's get to it. The first question that we have, on Sunday, I heard you say that we have a choice whether or not we come back here to this 3D world. I've been taught that the only way to break the cycle of birth and death is through total forgiveness, and that this is accomplished only here while we are seemingly in a body. If there is anyone or anything or any situation that we have not forgiven with true forgiveness, not ego forgiveness, we will return to the 3D world whether we want to or not. And this will repeat lifetime after lifetime until we have forgotten or until we have forgiven everything. So let's talk about this. Where to start? I think in general, there's been an evolution, if you will, in the spiritual community about how this physical realm works. And I think that it's a very popular idea that we're stuck in a cycle and that we keep coming until we learn whatever it is we're supposed to learn, or in the example of the question, until we've forgiven everything we need to forgive. I don't think that's really how it works at all. Part of that, I say, because of my own personal experience. And my own personal experience and my own personal memories are that I had a choice. I didn't have to come. And I was asked to come. I was asked to come and play a specific role. And I didn't want to come, as you may recall, in the beginning. I quite adamantly didn't want to come. This is a very common memory that the people that I have found who have memories from the other side, from before coming here, it's a very common thread that there is resistance to coming back into the 3D world. And but with my memory, I was given a choice. So I know personally that it's not quite true that we're in this trapped cycle until we do something. There's also a number of spiritual teachers now that are saying that there's nothing we came to do or to learn. Neil Donald Walsh's conversations with God have told him that there's nothing we came here to do. That doesn't match with my personal experience either, because I was asked to come here to specifically do something. So I think you have to start by looking at the largest realm there is, which is this collective that we've created, where there are all these beings that have come in. And then I think the next thing we need to understand is that when we choose to come in, and I do believe that it's a choice for everyone, If I was given a choice, I don't believe it can be different for anybody else. The other people that I know that remember the other side also all agree they were given a choice. So I think that we have enough information at this point to say it's not a trap. We're not caught. We're not stuck. Now, in my case, I came in to do what I was asked to do. Other people's experiences, though, are that they may have come in to experience something that they're of their own choosing. It's all a choice, number one. What we can say with 100% assurity is that if you're here, there's a reason. There's a reason you're here. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have a reason for being here. That we can say, I can say with 100% confidence. Now, this idea that there's a cycle. There are a lot of people who think they're in a cycle. And let's talk about forgiveness as well. And the person that asked the question makes a valid point when they distinguish between forgiveness, total true forgiveness versus ego forgiveness. So in this 3D realm, we have a process we call forgiveness. And it really is a 3D construct, because if you are completely embodied and whole, and you're interacting in this 3D world, you're not going to need to forgive anything, because your mindset is going to be one of acceptance of divinity. Everything that's here, in whatever condition it is in the moment, is a function of divinity. And so when you look at everything that way, you come to a place where you realize that nothing ever needs to be forgiven, because nothing is ever wrong. But when you drop out of that frequency down into a 3D realm frequency where someone has hurt your feelings or done something to you that make you uncomfortable or unhappy, that's what we're talking about when I believe when we use the term ego forgiveness. So that's the process where you find it in your heart to let go the injury. And so forgiveness in this level, at this realm, is like putting a suitcase down or letting go of a hot ember. When you hold something against someone else, the actual only person that you're hurting is yourself. And I can't pull the quote out of my head right now, but there is a quote about, the inability to forgive is like holding a hot coal in your hand. The only person you're hurting is yourself. So forgiveness in that realm is a function of our hearts and a function of our processing our emotions. When you get to the point where you realize that we are one with everything and that everything is divinity in action, you can respond to things a different way, and you can come to a place where you never feel the need to forgive anything, because there's never anything that requires forgiving. It's a little bit like the quote from the very famous book from the last century called Love Story by Eric Siegel. There's a quote in there: love means never having to say you're sorry. And a lot of people don't understand the true meaning of that quote, but it's the same idea as the idea that there's never anything that needs forgiving. Because if we're all divinity in form, the circumstances are completely different, and you look at them completely differently. Let's see. Let me come back to the questions here and see if I have any comments. Okay, so there's no comments so far on what I'm saying. If there is anybody out there that has questions or comments about what I'm saying, feel free to reach out. So we're not really repeating these lives lifetime after lifetime until we've forgiven everything. Because everybody's reason for coming here is going to be unique. And the only reason you're going to come back is through agreement. Now, that's not to say that maybe you wanted to perfect a particular skill or a particular ability, or you wanted to, make something in this 3D world happen, and you weren't successful in the lifetime that you have. You can come back and do it again. You can keep coming back and keep trying until you get it right, if that's what your mission is. There's nothing to stop you from doing that. But I want to just encourage people not to feel like you're in some way trapped here. And I don't want you to ever feel like, oh my God, if I don't get it right in this lifetime, I'm going to have to come back and do it again. It won't be like that. It's not that experience. And best if you can process your way out of that mindset, because that's not what you're here for. We're basically here, all of us, no matter why we came. The ultimate purpose of all of us is shared and the same. We're trying to create an experience of heaven on earth in a physical realm. And we do that through service to each other. Not a single one of us came in to just go through this physical life on our own, getting rich, buying what we want, and having the experiences that we can pay for. That isn't ever why we come into form. We're light beings, we're spiritual beings, we're divinity. And so, one thing I might suggest is that start just saying that to yourself. I'm divinity. I'm divinity in form. I have a reason for being here. And even if you're not clear on what that reason is, just saying those words will allow everything around you to support you and help reveal to you what your reason is. And you can make it more powerful. You can ask, please show me. Here's another question. I mentioned a ring with the inscription, I think, therefore I am. And recently, this person heard a spiritual teacher saying, or teaching saying, I think, therefore I am not. I don't think that can end there. I think, therefore, I am not. There's something has to come after that, because the Rene Descartes saying, I think, therefore I am, is an awareness of self, right? It's an ownership of, I am in this housing and I exist through my thought. Of course, we know through the body we're existing not just through our thought, but through the actual being breathed, right? Our physical bodies, and we haven't gotten into this in the book yet, but our physical bodies are the housing within which we reside. And what Rene Descartes was trying to pinpoint was the being that resides within the physical housing. I'm not sure I can wrap my head around what the phrase, I think, therefore I'm not, with a period at the end. I don't know what that means. It kind of strikes me as someone's ego trying to be cute or smart. But it doesn't hold meaning for me. That's all I can say, really. If it holds some meaning for you, then that's fine. It doesn't hold any meaning or truth for me in that phrase. Now, let me come back to the video and see. Okay. Well, I'm so glad we've got a few people with us. I'm excited to have you here. If you do have anything you'd like to add to the conversation, please feel free to put it into the chat or or to text me at 907-351-3003. I'm going to look at the notes here. I have some other questions that came in previously. One of the questions that came in was, what is fear? And so I think I may have talked about this some before, but we'll talk about it again a little. It's always good, I think, to talk about fear so that we can understand what it is and try and help ourselves get past it. Because in terms of how our bodies perceive the world that we live in, this is a fearful place. And our bodies have the collective cellular memory of the things that happen in a 3D world. And so even though perhaps you might be a young person and nothing traumatic physically has ever happened to you, the cells of your body know that they can. They know that terrible things can happen, terrible physical things can happen, painful things, and emotionally painful things, right? We can get our heart broken. And so you may not have had those experiences yet, but your body knows you've had them, knows them from a collective, maybe not in this lifetime, but in other lifetimes, in this realm. So fear is something that is a very natural physical response to the world around us. And imagine, if you're just kind of walking through the jungle and a huge lion leaps out to eat you, that's a fearful thing. If you're walking down the street and a huge dog comes out and runs at you to bite you, that's a fearful thing. And our bodies have wiring designed to respond to the fear. And so we end up in what I refer to as a knee-jerk reaction to things because of the housing. So when something happens to us, in any given moment, there's always the choice. We let the body take over, or we can think and be mindful. If you let the body take over and you're afraid, you're either going to run, you're going to freeze like a doe in the headlights, or you're going to fight with whatever is in front of you. Those are your wired responses if you're afraid. If your heart is broken, or you're afraid of getting your heart broken, then you're going to withdraw, you're going to or it depends on under what circumstances you think your heart's going to be broken. You might become desperate and needy and clinging. But the actual physical response of the body, not the psychological response, is going to be to either fight, freeze, or flee. So how do we get past fear? And the way you can get past fear is by becoming really conscious in the moment and reminding yourself that you are divinity in form, that there's a much bigger thing going on here than meets the eye, and that whatever comes next in the next moment is also a function of divinity. So I'll give you an example. The other day, I was in a big city. I was in Anchorage, and this was not the most recent trip, but a different trip. And I had taken the dog to the dog park, but it was nighttime. It was dark. And I initially, upon getting out of the vehicle, had some what I have to refer to as fear, right? My mind started going through all these checkpoints. Now, I used to live in New York City when I was a young woman, and it was the same kind of process. Knowing where the keys are, holding in the right place, making sure the vehicle's locked, making sure you've got this, and getting situated, right? And looking around and making sure you know who's where and where's, Well, in the midst of that, I realized that what had happened was my body had just taken over, and my body was in control in that moment of what was happening in my life. And as soon as I became aware of that, and I remembered, but your divinity here in form, you're not being stupid. You're here to walk the dog, and you'll be fine. God doesn't want anything to happen to you because you're here for a reason. You have something to do. And I was able to just relax and not get stupid. You don't put yourself into positions where other people can take advantage of you. You stay smart, but you don't have to be fearful. And that's the difference. That's when you've moved out of that body running you into conscious being, actively living your life. And it's not an easy thing to achieve, and it's not an easy thing to maintain, but it is the most important thing that you can work towards, is letting go of fear, because you can't raise your vibration. You cannot connect to the divinity around you if you stay in that fearful place. And if you remember back to the David Hawkins scale of consciousness that we talked about, fear is down at like 200 in terms of a vibrational frequency on a scale of 1 to 1,000. So, and you want to be at love and above. That's where you want to kind of stay, love or above. So it's really, the exercise of learning how to control your fear and work through your fear is one of the most important things a person can learn to do. So kind of going along with that, there was a question about trusting in life's unfolding and what it means to surrender. Now, this phrase surrender can come up a lot, and it comes up a lot in religious context, where people are being asked to surrender, and the question becomes, what are we surrendering? And I think the easier way to think of it, rather than surrender, because surrender as a word is quite often associated with war and peace. And, you're at war and then you surrender. And that's a process of giving up. And so I don't think surrender is necessarily the best spiritual word to use. I think a better spiritual word to use is acceptance or allowance, right? When we wake up in the morning, we tend to have an expectation of how the day is going to go or what's going to happen in the day. And what we can find is that as we're going through the day and the day isn't going the way we expected, that can cause us misery, unhappiness. And that misery and unhappiness comes from an inability to surrender, if you will, to what's really happening in the moment. But if you look at it a different way and you say, I'm going to allow whatever shows up. I'm going to accept whatever shows up. And I'm going to understand that for whatever reason, this is what divinity has brought me today. Now, just yesterday, I had a very, very upsetting day. And yet the entire time, as I'm muddling through this very upsetting day, I'm looking at it as a gift, because every day is a gift. And it's my gift to deal yesterday, with what was showing up. And so at that point, my job just becomes to be the best me I can be, to be as loving and heart-based as I can, and to work through whatever it is that's showing up. We cause ourselves great unhappiness with our resistance to what is. You don't have to like it. I'm not suggesting that you like everything that show up, or that you should like it, or that it's likable. It might not be. But it's yours. It's here. So why fight it? Right? That's the real insight, is if you're fighting it, you're making it worse. And so when an employee, fails to do whatever it is they promised they would do, or when a car pulls out in front of you, or when you have an accident, or whatever it may be, whatever it is, no one's saying you need to like it. But what I'm suggesting is that you'll be happier if you don't fight it. If you look at it as an opportunity to learn more about yourself and about the situation. And if you just continue to always approach things from that place, you'll find, first of all, that a lot of challenges will just stop showing up. Because challenges quite often show up because they're here to show you something, or lead you to something, or help you learn something. And if you're constantly resisting, there's that saying, what you resist persists. If something is persisting in your life, then there's a message in it. I remember once journaling when I was a young woman in my early 20s. I was journaling about the kind of men that kept showing up in my life. And I realized that through the journaling process that there was actually a real similarity between them. And then that gave me a clue, right? The same thing is showing up over and over again. It's kind of like, divinity knocking you on the head and saying, hello, can you open your eyes enough to see this, learn this, get past this, whatever it may be? So that's a little bit about surrender. Trust in life's unfolding, right? Have faith. Have faith in what's happening. And again, don't get distracted by what's happening in circles outside of your circle. You can observe those things. But if you get emotionally tied up in judgments about other people, now you're kind of off in the weeds. You're lost to your own process. So it's very important not to get sucked into social media or the news and allow that to run your life. Like, stay here. Focus on you and what's coming up with you. How are you feeling in the moment? Because that's your key to what's going on with you. And learning how to manage your emotions is something that we never teach our children, and yet it's one of the most important things you can do as a human being to become a functioning, balanced, whole person. So let's see. This wasn't a question so much as a new form of meditation that I heard about. And I think I've mentioned it before, but it came back up around and I thought I'd mention it again, especially because of what's coming in the next couple of weeks energetically. It may be very helpful to remember this meditation. This is based on some teachings from my friend Rhonda Renee. And she, I'm not going to think of her tagline, but if you, it's Ronda, I believe, Renee, Renee, if you want to Google her. Divine coordinates, that's it. That's her tagline. She developed a system called divine coordinates, and she works with people to identify their divine coordinates, and then that helps them figure out where they are in life and where they want to go. It's a good method, but as a byproduct of that, she sent out an email a few days ago, or a newsletter a few days or weeks ago, even at this point, about crying. And she makes a really valid point. We, as we go through our day, have, depending on what kind of a day we're having, we may have one or more events that would bring up tears. And the way most of us have been conditioned is we've been conditioned to stuff those tears away and not express them. Your crying in the workplace is frowned upon. Crying in general tends to be frowned upon. We tend to tell little children not to cry. Grow up, you know. So crying is actually a physical mechanism of the body. It's part of our wiring. And it's designed to release sadness. It's a physical way of releasing sadness. If you've ever seen a little kid cry to the point where they get to that, like they can't breathe and they're sobbing, once that passes, they are the most mellow usually, because they've let out in that process of crying all of the hurt. And probably not just from that moment's problem, but collectively from other things that have happened where they hadn't cried enough. And so what Rhonda Renee suggests is that you, on a daily basis or weekly basis, have a crying meditation where you get in touch with those feelings that you have that want to bring tears forth, and you let them out. I may have mentioned this before in one of our conversations, but back in the 80s, I received a download from the universe that many forms of cancer, not all, because there are environmental cancers that are caused, but emotional cancers are quite often our repressed emotions. And I received that download when a friend of ours had discovered that they had cancer on the roof of their mouth. It's a very rare form of cancer, and their dentist found it during a regular checkup. So if you've ever wondered why your dentist does this on the roof of your mouth, that's what he's looking for. He's looking for tumors. And in the exam that our friend had, they found one. And he ended up having to have his upper palate removed and a plate that he wears to replace that. Whenever people discover they have cancer, one of the things quite often that they'll do is they'll look at their life and be very introspective about it. And what this gentleman realized and remembered was that when he was little and he was mad at his parents, his way of showing that he was mad is that he would refuse to eat and to speak. So his weapon was a mouth, his mouth. That was his weapon. And that's where his cancer showed up. And it was because I was meditating about his cancer that I received that message. That in his case, that cancer is a physical manifestation of his unhappiness, of his broken heart. Now, had those parents been equipped to work with that child, to cajole the child into sharing what he was mad about, instead of continuing to use his mouth as a weapon, there's a good chance he never would have had that cancer. So that's why it's so important in my mind that we take advantage of this idea of a crying meditation and let the tears out. I was extremely sad yesterday, and I haven't done that yet, but I will. But you see, if it bubbles up like that, it needs out, because if you don't let it out, what's it going to do? You can tell this housing is upset, right? There's something going on with it. And if I don't take care of it and allow whatever it is that's going on to be processed in the manner that it needs to be processed, then what I'm doing is taking it and stuffing it back in. And it won't have anywhere to go. It won't get processed. And chances are it won't just sit there, right? Things like that will fester. And so I wanted to share that with you because I think, and this goes for men and women, and I think men even more. You know, women, we tend to be a little bit more wired for easy crying and haven't perhaps been as deprogrammed about allowing crying as men have. So I think for men, it's even a more important concept to really wrap your mind around and practice in the release of it. It'll feel very uncomfortable, I think, initially, and then I think once you get used to it, it will it'll feel good. It'll feel really good. Let's see. I don't have any comments or questions coming in. Let me check this phone and see if anybody's texted here. Nope, haven't got any other texts. So I can't stress enough the importance of achieving emotional wholeness. It's really my belief that emotional wholeness is the only way we're going to solve the problems of the world and everything that's wrong with the world. All the meanness, all the lying, all the stealing, all the cheating, all of it can be summed up in 2 words. The remedy for all of it can be summed up in 2 words: self-love. When we learn what we are and we love ourselves, then everything changes. Everything changes. Because if you love yourself, you have no need to be mean to somebody else, to lie to somebody else. You don't have any need of any of those things. You don't need to cheat anybody, because when you love yourself, you know that you're whole and that you have within your own capability everything you need, including the answers to your questions, by going within and listening. So self-love is really the path to the wholeness of the planet. We are very distracted because we are caught up thinking that everything that needs fixing is out here, when in fact there actually isn't anything out here anyway, right? Everything that needs fixing is in here. So I had a friend today share, I do a circle earlier in the day, and one of the members of the circle shared how they had an encounter with a friend of theirs that really went quite awry. And what they observed was that they were able to weather the storm of the conversation going south on them and stay more in observer mode than anything, and not get triggered and was able to find the right time in the conversation to leave, and graciously and easily left. That was possible because this person has been doing her inner work for years and has come to a place where she's whole. And she could be aware of the other person saying things that were maybe not even nice about her even. And instead of her taking it personally or it triggering her in any way, she was able to stay in that sort of observer mode and not take it on. She loved herself to stay secure in herself. And that's what I hope for everyone. That's what I hope we all can come to eventually, is a self-love that allows us to interact with each other without being triggered and feeling the need to retaliate or lash out at each other. Because right now, society is just caught up in a big pointing finger game. Everybody thinks it's somebody else's fault. And we're caught up with judgments and labels and really not looking at the world in a true sense with our real eyes. Well, I think I may have exhausted my list for today. I guess there's one last note, just to remind folks that it's not an easy concept to grasp, but there is no such thing as time. And so I know we're all like looking at the clock going, okay, we got 45 minutes left, or we've been on here for 42 minutes or whatever. When in fact, the reality of it is, this has been created, this time bucket that we're living in has been created so that we can experience this physical realm. But in essence, the moment you heal something in yourself, in this lifetime, you heal it in yourself in all lifetimes. And so you can radically change your experience of this 3D world through your healing of yourself. Excuse me, my nose just started running. One other thing, we did talk about this, I think it was last week in the reading, although it's not mentioned in the reading. Grounding or earthing. There are many products. I did get a question about this. There are many products available that are called either earthing sheets or grounding sheets, grounding pads. Amazon has all kinds of things. You can also buy them directly from the places that are making them. If you just Google that, you'll get all kinds of options. If you go on YouTube, there is a video that was made in Haines, Alaska, by a cinematographer that worked for National Geographic about earthing or grounding. And if you can find that video, it is definitely worth watching. It is fascinating. I think it's about an hour long. It's absolutely fascinating. But what the basic premise is that we are earth beings, we are physical beings, and that we're intended through creation and nature to be connected to the earth. And because of the clothing that we wear now, the shoes that we're wearing predominantly that are plastic, have plastic soles, that our actual connection to the earth upon which we reside has been broken. And this gentleman in Haines documents how with these products that they developed, like sheets that have copper wires in them that you plug into the grounded outlet of your house, which is then grounded to the earth. If people slept on these sheets, they would experience a reduction in pain. If they had an autoimmune problem going on that was causing them a lot of physical pain, it would cause a reduction in that pain. There was a gentleman with Parkinson's that was in a wheelchair and had been in a wheelchair for something like 30 years. And they started, this gentleman, and he lived in Haines, they started doing work with this grounding equipment. And at the end of the video, you see this gentleman walking. So there's a lot to be said for the process. Now, what I can personally tell you is that I have gotten a grounding sheet and a grounding pillowcase. And of course, I wasn't in pain to start with, so I don't have that experience. And I really am not sure what kind of an experience I'm having. The one thing I can say is that my sleep tends to be different. Although I will say last night, and this was very strange, I had a sensation last night of being awake for pretty much from 3 o'clock on. Yet when I checked the app for my Fitbit, it didn't reflect that at all. So last night there was definitely something going on in the ethers, I think, that was messing with my sleep. But in general, my Fitbit does not show that I'm having any different experience of sleep. But what I can say is that when I wake up, I feel as if I have been more well rested, even though there's no data to show or to support that. But I know other people who have this, have gotten like the sleeping pad and have had increased sleep, better sleep, less pain, and in general feel better. So it's just another tool that may help you get in touch with your body or help your body tune to the frequencies of Earth, etc. Whenever people are having physical problems, it's my belief that your body is trying to tell you something. And there's a great book by a doctor by the name of Michael J. Lincoln called Messages from the Body. It's like a Bible. It's if you get the printed copy, it's extremely thick. But they do have a digital version as well. He's a psychologist, and he has gone through and documented all kinds of physical anomalies and added to them or documented with them the psychological meaning behind them. And what I can tell you is that whenever I'm working with someone and we're talking about a physical problem they're having, and I look up what it says in that book, in Michael J. Lincoln's book, Messages from the Body, and I read it to them, it almost always resonates 100%. So the body is an amazing thing that we really don't understand in many, many ways. And one of the things I looked up out of curiosity was a pain in the side. When I was about 9, I think, I developed a pain in my abdomen or side, my right side. And I ended up in the hospital for 10 days. It was quite a while. And they did all kinds of tests on me. And in all honesty, I'm quite sure that I originally made that pain up because of what was going on in my house. But what's interesting is when I read the paragraph in Messages from the Body that matched what the symptoms had been, it matched exactly what was going on in my house. The way my parents were, the kind of climate that I was living in, and it explained it 100%. So I know there's some truth to it from my own personal experience. So one of the things that we can focus on in the next, coming days is to get in touch with your body. Start to really pay attention to what your body wants, what it's needing, and start asking questions of yourself. When you have a pain, ask your body to tell you, why are you giving me this pain? Try to communicate. Because most of the time we look at this and we treat this as if it's something else. And it's not. It's the thing we live in. It's more important than our house, actually. It is our house for our spirit and our soul. And so tending to it is not egotistical. Tending to it is necessary so that you can be all that you came here to be. So many people are suffering from some form of physical problem right now, whether it's obesity or diabetes or an suppressed immune system, an autoimmune problem, indigestion, high blood pressure. These are all signs. And what we tend to do is we just tend to go to the doctor and tell them what's wrong, and they give us a pill or they do something. But if behind everything is a meaning for you, and we're not looking for that, and we're not tending to that, then we're missing a whole piece of information that we really need. And so part of self-love is really learning to take care of this body in a way that you have probably not been taking care of it. Honoring it. Because it's your vessel. It's your vessel. And you can make it better if you choose to. And I don't mean through judgment or through a stressful process. I mean just through connecting to it. You'll have a better experience of life. So, I think we're getting kind of close to the end of the hour, and I think I may have totally exhausted the things on the list at the moment. So I think maybe we'll wrap up a few minutes early, unless anybody has any last breaking questions they want to submit. 907-351-3003. Okay. I don't see any. So I'm going to say thank you to those of you who were here. And I appreciate you all, those that came and gone, those that stayed the whole time. And remember, I'll be back here on Sunday at the same time reading. And let's see, where are we in the book? I think we've got a... Oh, now I'm not sure where we are. Oh, yes, Chapter 2, Dealing in Dimensions. And we're going to read about the sacral chakra before that. Our first, that'll be the first time we've moved into the sacral chakra. So that's what's up for Sunday. And until then, I hope you take care, stay safe, and I will see you here next time. Namaste and much love.